Welcome to a new video in my educational channel. In this video, I'll be explaining how to configure pop-ups in ArcGIS Online to include geometric info using arcade geometry functions. In this map, I have two layers, Times Square and green buildings. So this is the area of Manhattan in New York City. And these are a sample of green buildings in the area. If I click on one of the points, I only see the building name. I want to include the distance for each point in its pop-up to Times Square point, which is in the other layer. Okay, let's select the green buildings layer. Click on pop-ups. And then click on attribute expressions. Add expression. Okay, now let's start writing arcade code. So first thing, I want to get the geometry of the Times Square point from the other layer. I'll define a variable. I'll call it tsqr layer. Then I can use the arcade function feature set by name. The first parameter will be the map, and the second parameter will be the name of the layer. Close it with a semicolon. So what I'm doing here is that I'm defining a variable to allow me to access the other layer. Right now, we're inside the green buildings layer, but I want to access the Times Square. So I need to make an access to the other layer. And just to let you know, if you click here under the global map object, you should see the list of layers in the map. As you can see, there are two functions to access the layers in a map: feature set by name, which is the one that we're using, and there is another one called feature set by ID. So feature set by ID basically allows you to access a layer by passing the ID instead of the name. Okay, I'll go back. I'll get rid of these comments and write my own. Get the feature set of Times Square layer. Next, I want to define the variable where I can store the geometry of the Times Square point. I'll call it tsqr geom tsqr layer. So I want to access the first feature in the feature set tsqr layer, the one I defined in this line. And the way to do that is using the first function from arcade. So the first function from arcade will grab the first feature in the feature set. Then I need to get the geometry of this feature. So basically I pass the feature to the geometry function. Okay, let me add a comment here. Define the Times Square point geometry. Now let's use the DistanceGeodetic function. I'll define a variable for distance, and instead of writing the function and its parameters, I can click on functions, type dist. So this is the function we're going to use, and as you can see, it requires 3 parameters. So the first 2 are the points, and the third one is a unit. For the first one, I'll use the tsqr geom. The second point, I'm going to use the geometry function to extract the geometry of each feature. So if I go back to global, I can click feature here. So again here, I'm extracting the geometry of each feature in each row and measuring the distance versus the Times Square point. I'll enclose it here with a semicolon. And now I'll return distance. I'll add a comment here, measure the distance between T-square point versus each point in green buildings. Okay, I'll click test. So as you can see, this is the result. Maybe we can do some modifications. So how about rounding the distance to 2 decimals? And let's concatenate with M for meters. Test. I can add a space here, or I can add both items into a list like this and add a separator. Now, let's say, for example, I want to change the units to feet. Change this to F. So this is the distance in feet. I'll type the word feet here. All right. And now, let's say, for example, the Times Square layer has more than one point. So how can we extract the geometry we need? The Times Square layer has only one feature, but let's say, for example, it had more than one feature. How can we solve that issue? So we can extract the geometry of the point named Times Square. So basically, I'll create this as null, which means no value. And now I can loop all features in the feature set. I think I should have called it feature set, something like this, and I'll rename it here. Okay, and now I can use a condition, if name. I know for sure that this layer has a column called name. So if name equal times square, then tsqr geom equal geometry of f, semicolon. So what I'm doing here, I'm looping through all the features in the feature set. And if the name matches Times Square, pass the geometry to this null object. Okay, so we define the variable outside the loop. Then inside the loop, we're updating the value of the variable with the geometry of the feature that matches Times Square. Okay, I have an error. So let's see here. All right, I need to define the variable f here. Click test. All right, so now it works. Now I'll change the name here. Distance to Times Square. Save. Okay, then I go back here, and from the field list, click here and select distance to Times Square. Done. All right, now I'll close this here. And as you can see, if I click here, this is the distance between this point and Times Square. This is the distance for the nearest point, and so on. That's it for this video. I hope you learned something here. Thank you for watching.